Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, I thought we'd kind of take a look at our corn stalks and how our stalk standability looks at today's, date. Here we're in October. I know we've talked about on a couple of earlier episodes how I suspect stock quality may be a concern here going forward on this corn crop, and in some cases it is. We've had lots of stresses on this corn. We've had everything from spider mite pockets to corn aphids, and we've talked about those. Rootworm beetles are showing up pretty heavy late. Earlier on we had the rootworm larvae that were doing a lot of damage, especially in corn on cornfields, so chewing on some roots in a dry year is never a good thing. But any of those kinds of stresses probably had an impact on our yield a little bit, especially in those smaller pockets, maybe bigger pockets. But any of that stuff probably is going to have an impact not only on yield, but how this thing stands today. So I'm out here in a field. This is actually a pretty good looking field here. You can see there's a lot of stalk health here. None of these are ready to kink. They still have some juice left in them. You can cut stalks and see how things look, but I think it's going to be pretty obvious at this stage. If you go out into a field and you see a bunch of stalks that are kind of weak and kinked over already, or when you push them they kink, there's probably nothing left in the center of the stalk. It's been cannibalized. As we dry it out here at the end, if that area, that field that you're in really struggled, if that plant shut down before the corn was finished, the roots couldn't take up enough nutrients, because roots can't take up nutrients and moisture out of a totally dry soil, which we had, especially in lighter soils. It tried to suck juice out of those stalks and finish that ear as best it could. So that'll obviously make it a poorer stander. This one, you can see, these are all, these have all got juice in. They're all pretty good yet. You cut these open, they're gonna have a nice juicy center of the stalk, and obviously they're standing well. If you've got that, great. But I would caution you to take a look at some of your fields now that we're basically done with soybeans. Here we can get into this corn. The corn's in general drier than what guys think as they get into it, so that's a good thing. Let's get going on this, but we want to maybe take a look at which fields to prioritize. We're early enough. If the stalk standability is good, there's no rush to hurry on a lot of these fields, but if you do have some that are struggling, we need to know which ones are in worse shape. So one neat thing you'll see in these, and you'll see this in some of your better standing areas of your fields. So why are these, showing these nice purple colors in these stalks? We see it, but what's really causing that? Is that a disease coming in or anything? And it's not. Basically, it's the same thing that happens with a lot of your trees, your maple trees, or some of these trees that turn nice color. The leaves turn nice colors in the fall. The reason they do that is they're basically done growing for the year. The sugar flow in that plant is done. So when that happens, there's sugars in these plants that are basically stopped where that plant ended up being, fully mature. So why are those purple, and why are they purple kind of more around the nodes in this case? What's happening is you can see that the sun has bleached these sugars that are in these plants, and they turn that reddish raspberry, maybe a purplish look. The more of that you see, generally the healthier your stalk quality is. So why is it more on the upper part of this, this node, or towards the node here? If you look, I've got an example here. It's basically, I've torn all the leaf sheaths away on these plants, but here's a before and an after. You can see that leaf sheath that's hanging on that plant is basically just blocking the sun hitting it. It's got the same amount of sugars in, that's not a difference, but it just looks different because of its exposure to the sun. It's kind of like when you have your farmer tan, it's because your shoulder caught just as much sun, but your shirt caught it, not your skin like your arm. So it's kind of the same thing that corn is experiencing. But having a lot of those sugars in the stalks obviously is a good thing, and that'll help your standability. Now, it is something you have to kind of understand a little bit though. As you go out into some of these fields, you do see something that's maybe more of a brown or a black by these nodes and not a purplish. That is a disease called anthracnose. Anthracnose really is a disease that only attacks dead tissue. So this plant is done with its sugar flow, so it's basically mature, or it's basically dead. So once in a while, and in some fields it's on every plant, and it's really having stalk standability issues. This is just starting to show up, like on this plant. You can see it's some discoloration that's not the same purple. It hasn't done much to it yet, but it always starts around the nodes, and then it progresses away from that. It's basically cannibalizing. It's consuming some of that internal energy in that pith in that center of the stalk. So that'll lead to some standability problems later. This one will not stand as long as this one because this one's exhibiting some anthracnose just starting. It'll continue to get worse as time goes on. We've got another plant here. This is kind of what's showing up on this node. You can maybe kind of see a little bit of purple on this side, but this is more of a black and brown. So that's kind of some anthracnose just starting to show. No concern at all. It'll be a little while before this stalk has an issue, but it will continue to progress. So that's something you can see. That's a dark discoloration as well, and that's not as desirable as these purples. Just thought we'd touch on that, just some things to look for in your fields, but go out, take a look. That's the best way to do it. You'll figure out which field you want to get the combine to first, and hopefully we have a safe harvest. Hopefully we can get this combine fire thing out of the way without these winds. We've had plenty of that issue lately this week. Hopefully that goes away and we don't have these windy issues like we've had. So continue to have a safe harvest. Hopefully it's a bountiful one. There are some good yields out there yet, and hopefully your stock quality is good. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.